per questo bel intermezzo. Buongiorno a tutti quanti. Cominciamo con un po' di anticipo, quindi forse potremo avere un pochino più di tempo a nostra disposizione. Benvenuti. Io mi chiamo Mario Tedeschini Lalli, sono il vice direttore innovazione e sviluppo del Gruppo Espresso, un ex antico giornalista e sono qui per presentarvi le persone che cortesemente hanno accettato di discutere con noi delle sfide e delle opportunità o anche dei rischi e dei pericoli che la nuova situazione del mondo digitale presenta alle aziende editoriali. Ve li presento. Dalla mia sinistra c'è Angela Wade Mills, che è il direttore esecutivo dello European Publishers Council, l'EPC, che è una grande organizzazione che riunisce i presidenti e gli amministratori delegati dei più grandi gruppi editoriali europei e che si propone di attivamente discutere all'interno e proporre all'esterno le questioni più rilevanti per l'editoria europea in questo momento. Angela Wade Mills, oltre a questo, è presidentessa del Publisher Content Forum del Regno Unito, vicepresidentessa della News Media Coalition e ha una serie di altri incarichi nel mondo del mediale e culturale. Dopo di lei c'è Nikos Gourakos, che sin dal 1996 lavora con l'Ambrakis Press, che è il più grande gruppo editoriale greco, e in questo momento di questo gruppo è il direttore della strategia, delle operazioni e dello sviluppo del business nella sua parte digitale. Nikos, oltre ad essere appunto un altissimo manager di Lambrakis, è anche il presidente della Online Publishers Association Europe, cioè dell'associazione degli editori online europea. Il successivo è Florian Nehm, che è il responsabile delle politiche di sostenibilità d'impresa e degli affari europei per la Axel Springer, che è la grandissima società editrice tedesca, che ha interessi ovviamente a cominciare da quelli giornalistici, che adesso si è allargata naturalmente a molti anche altri interessi, non soltanto in Germania, ma in tutto il mondo. Questo dibattito, come abbiamo detto prima, si svolgerà in parte in italiano e in parte in inglese. Per chi ne avesse bisogno, ci sono le cuffie della traduzione simultanea a disposizione nell'androne. Ringraziamo con l'occasione i colleghi che ci aiutano nella traduzione e possiamo incominciare. Allora, abbiamo sentito anche Carlo De Benedetti, presidente del Gruppo Espresso, che ci ha preceduto, che parlava delle sfide e delle possibilità, oltre che dei problemi che questo nuovo mondo pone alle aziende editrici, in particolare alle aziende editrici giornalistiche, no? Ai news publishers, come si dice in inglese, perché non ci sono aziende editrici molto degne, ma diciamo che hanno come loro core business, come loro missione principale, altro genere di contenuti. Noi stiamo parlando di contenuti giornalistici. Allora, io chiederei ai miei interlocutori, come prima cosa, un primo panorama dal loro rispettivo punto di vista, sia associativo, sia nel caso delle aziende, anche delle loro aziende, di quali sono i principali problemi che questa situazione offre e poi cercheremo di analizzarne alcuni di questi, suggerire se è possibile delle vie di uscita e se è possibile cercheremo anche di interloquire con il nostro pubblico. Ovviamente ci starà alla fine della sessione la possibilità di porre delle domande agli intervenuti e anche poi cercheremo di capire chi siamo noi, ve l'abbiamo detto, ci piacerebbe capire un po' chi siete voi, cioè capire chi abbiamo di fronte, ma questo magari lo facciamo successivamente. Prego Angela.
Okay. I think it's okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much to the organisers for having me here in this beautiful city of Pisa, and the sun shining today, so it's a real treat for us to be in beautiful Italy. We heard from Carlo De Benedetti that a really important message, which is that great journalism still matters, but really how readers experience that journalism probably will matter more in the future. At the moment, the European Publishers Council is going through an internal reflection, and the reason we're doing this is because there are elections next year to the European Parliament. The shape and political dynamics may alter in the European Parliament, and that will obviously have an impact on some of the key regulatory issues that we're dealing with, such as copyright and data privacy. I think some of the questions that came out of what Carlo was saying are about, how do newspaper brands navigate generational differences and generational preferences and even international differences? And how do you encourage people to pay for news, for great quality journalism? Reuters Institute for Journalism in the UK has started to do a survey, and last year they did a deep survey with 11,000 people, which showed that still 50% of those people, and they were across all different social sections of society, 50% still buy a newspaper at least once a week, but only 5% pay for digital every week. So are newspapers going to become a kind of niche product, chasing that 5%, leaving news to aggregators and possibly to broadcasters? If you're a publisher, you hope very much not. But this means, are there any alternatives to subscriptions and advertising? Because at the moment, both of those are really, really challenged, and I'm sure my colleagues are going to talk about that. But there's also some good things. Tablet usage has doubled in just a year for news in particular. Tablet users read news quite often and increasingly are prepared to pay for that news. There's a dramatic statistic that a third or more use smartphones for news access. And if you're commuting from the outskirts to a major city, the consumption of news on your smartphones in the morning is really significant. And what some of the people who are building subscription models have found is that people who go early to the news often come back later in the day. So one of the challenges for companies is to try and find out how to tap that news-hungry market, particularly amongst the youngsters, because it's the 18 to 24-year-olds who are really the very high users of smartphones. The more devices that people have, the more that they access news. And so therefore, the publishers have to think about how to package the news content for the different devices. And does this mean, do you have to change your newsroom processes? Do you have to redesign the way that you operate in a newsroom? And how do you focus? How do you decide how to focus what are increasingly limited resources for your journalists and your photographers and your editors and your production people? We've seen very recently, the Financial Times made a significant announcement yesterday. The editor wrote to all members of staff saying that they're going digital first. And he makes a very clear statement about to the people, a kind of take it or leave it. This is how we're doing it, and if you don't like it, then I suggest you go and look for another job. That's basically the bottom line of what he was saying. But actually what they are proposing in terms of transformation is really exciting. And I think it will serve as a model for many publishers who are prepared to go down a paid-for model. So that's all I would say by opening remarks.
Okay now? Okay, thank you. Good morning from me as well. Thank you very, very much for inviting me here. It's always interesting. I'm not going to talk about the weather, okay? But she's English, that's why she's talking about the weather. But I will talk about food, okay? It's very nice to be in Pisa because in Pisa, I can imagine in all Italy, fagiolata is like fasolada, which is the same food, okay? So last night I had fagiolata, and I said, I want a bean soup. They said, it's fasolada, you are Greek, it's fasolada. So we have the same food here, so it's fantastic, okay? Anyway, I'm Nikos Gouraras. I'm from Greece, okay? I am the president of the Online Publishers Association of Europe, and I also do this horrific job to be the strategy director of the largest media group in Greece. I don't think it's the best job that someone can have in these days, to be able to persuade the board about this kind of decisions, as just Angela mentioned. Okay, I'd like to mention that first of all, I don't want to be rude. I'm not typing while I'm not sending SMS. I've got my notes here. Okay. So, Mr. Benedetti said he was very polite, I think, in his talk, talking about the transition, okay? And actually, we are in the middle of the transition, but what I would like to say is that we are in the era of the economy of information, okay? And I think most importantly, we go to an era of the economy of conversation or the economy of sharing, okay? And I think this is the major issue in this kind of transition that we publishers have to face, okay? So I don't think it's only a transition, it's a complete redefinition of the publisher, is a complete redefinition of the product that we used to know, okay? We're talking about newspapers and all that. We're talking about a complete redefinition of the staff itself. Huh? We have new roles. And of course, we have a complete redefinition of the distribution mechanisms, okay? Of how we distribute content. Also, again, a complete redefinition of the target group, the actual readers. Everybody is talking about this X generation, D generation, F generation, God knows what all these letters are. I will stay on this C generation. What is C generation? Is the connected consumer. If you were let's say in the last years, in the previous years, you will say that you have a consumer consuming news, okay, we're talking about news here, information, and you would judge what the consumer does, most probably because of the age. So you'll say, I've got, most of my target group is between the age of 35 and 45, or most of my target group is of the age of 25 and 35, okay? Here we're talking about the C generation, which doesn't have to do with age. It does have to do with the connected behavior. Why do I say that? Because if we are publishers, if we are in the board, if we are Carlo De Benedetti, okay, the first thing we need to know is that our readers is this C generation, and we have to really take into account that we count not ages, but the connected behavior of our consumers, okay? There is, we face this battle, okay? Again, it's a polite word, it's a war, okay? It's not a battle, it's a real serious war between the evolutionary and the revolutionary change, okay? Be careful, they are two different words. Evolutionary change and revolutionary change, okay? Yeah, from people who are in this business, you know what happened with the Inquirer in the US, okay? The Inquirer was bought by a group of businessmen. They brought back a very traditional editor who, to try to take, let's say, the paper to the new, to this new transitional phase, okay? He stayed for some months and he fired him because he was too traditional for them, okay? So this is the real difference between evolutionary and revolutionary, okay? This is very, very important for the people to understand. Then we have this redefinition of the competition, okay? Again, very politely, Mr. De Benedetti says, spoke about Google and said this Google, these technology companies, how nice words, eh? Fantastic, okay? I will use another word, which I saw in a conference. They call Google, MSN, and all these guys, they call them GMDs. I said, what is GMDs? Actually, it was in London. British people love to have abbreviations. I said, what is GMDs? I said, probably something good, okay? No, they said, Google, MSN, and all these guys are guns of mass disruption. Huh? Okay? So we are talking about a different competition. From the one point is the GMDs, or the big guys, let's say, okay? From the other point, there are the non-traditional publishers, the ones that they are so-called native players. I hate this phrase, but this is what they think they are, meaning that they don't have paper in their strategy. And the third party who has been added on in the competition, and we don't take them very seriously, but I think probably is more serious competitor than the big guys, is the telecom communication companies, okay? Why? I will tell you a small example. If you search to see what happens in Europe now with these kiosks, you know, every country has a kiosk with digital paper in there. Slowly, all the kiosks are being bought by the large telecommunication companies. Okay, so this is competitor number 3. Huh? So what we say is that all these companies start biting pieces from our lunch. Yes. Okay. This is true. How I see that, to be honest, is like that we are in a poker game, and we're good poker players. Okay. We have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience in playing poker. But we're playing a poker game that the rules are changing real time. Real time, okay? So you have to be, you don't just have to have memory, you don't just have to be a good statistician, you don't need to be just clever enough, okay? You need to be adaptive all the time, real time, okay? And I will finish here. That's something that is, I think, very important, and we don't discuss that very often, is that it was a French philosopher, if I don't remember, if I'm not wrong, and he was saying that, you know, you Greeks, you invented democracy, you know, these big words and all that, and you had Pericles, okay, who invented the democracy of administration. Nice, okay, nice phrase. You Greeks, what you did is you had Pericles, and Pericles invented the democracy of administration. we had bad use of democracy and good use of democracy, but we invented it, okay? Fantastic. The French philosopher said that now, in this information era, in this sharing era, in this digital media era, in this revolutionary era, he said that you should bring a new Pericles who is going to invent the democracy of ethics. This is very, very important. Ethics in businesses, business ethics, journalistic ethics, and to be honest with you, I will say it very slowly, competition ethics. Okay? It's very competition ethics. Okay? This is very, very important. When I started doing this business, I'm not a journalist, okay? Let's say I'm a digital guy, okay? People were saying that, I was asking our publisher, I said, what is newspapers? He said that newspapers are the first draft of democracy. So I said, now, with all these things happening, that we really need to preserve this draft of democracy. Okay? Thank you.
Grazie. Florian?
Si ascolta? Yeah. My name is Florian Nehm. I work for the Axel Springer Group in Berlin. We are a journalistic enterprise of some 13,000 employees, among them 3,500 journalists. And the cultural and business changes from paper to online and finding a new balance between paper and online is going on. About 30% of my salary is digital today, but this is mainly e-commerce. The content sales is very weak yet, and I would like to make this my main point, being at the Città Universitaria di Pisa. Everything my colleagues described are the processes we have inside our companies, and publishers are used to competition, or we are successful with our homeworks or not, but this is not really your business. But we do depend on you in this room and in society when it comes to user habits and voting habits. And I would like to use the opportunity to make a little test in this audience with the question of open society, meaning our product, edited news and entertainment for free, or pay. One thing is the paywall, the other thing is the legal right to our content, the copyright or the protection of intellectual property. And what I find in many audiences, in some audiences, and especially in universities, is the question and a different view saying that content should be not only free, but for free. And this little question, free or for free, will decide about bankruptcy or existence, financing or not financing of journalists, and by that professional journalism, and the diversity of kiosks, the diversity of opinions. Out of these discussions, sometimes or often the question, publishers are sleepy and do not invent new business models. Then the publishers are a little hesitant whether we were really sleeping the siesta, but the answer is no. There is no other business model. In journalism, we live from selling the content at the kiosk on paper and in internet as well. People willing to pay for our product. And once we have the attention, we can as well sell some advertising with a Chinese wall between the advertising side and the editorial side. That is the model. The alternatives are advertisers-driven editorial content. That means journalists with blind eyes because they cannot write critically about the advertiser, or industrialists or banks owning companies, journalistic companies, because they cannot live from journalism. Or state, beautiful, state owning and subsidizing journalistic enterprises. Or foundations, an American idea. Foundations, fine, I have no problems with foundations, but foundations cannot replace the colorfulness of a kiosk, the creativity. Foundations welcome, state absolutely not welcome, but you will decide as voters and supporters of those members of parliament who share this view, and advertisers as producers of journalism or other enterprises, be it search engines with other interests, etc., etc. So my question to you is, and if you want, please raise the hand for one or the other. Do you are of the opinion that journalistic content should be not only free but for free? And the other question is, do you agree or would you support that the legal protection, the modernization of intellectual property laws should be in a way that the producer of intellectual property, of content, should be the only owner, the full sovereignty of this? So my first question, open access, do you agree, do you support the idea? Is there an opinion in this room? And maybe we have a different opinion later on or in the discussion. This is, in our view, the key question, and this is why we discuss internally as well. Publishers, do not cry too much, bring together your act, talk to your members of parliament, talk to your governments, and modernize the laws. In Germany, there is a law that entered into effect August 1st with a very short German name, Leistungsschutzrecht für Presseverleger. What it means is ancillary rights that in Google News, as an example of aggregators, the snippets, not only the full text, but the short snippets, the 3 lines of a Google News snippet, is as well protected, is as well of the exclusive ownership of the producer. The law says, who uses journalistic content for commercial purposes, not us as citizens, but for commercial purposes, needs the permission of the producer, full stop. In order to achieve this, it was necessary to discuss and lobby for about 4 or 5 years with heavy counter lobbying saying it should be for free and you publishers invent other business models, and then we come back to state advertising, etc., etc. So my challenge to this room today in the Città Universitaria di Pisa is our future, the future, your future of free journalism financed exclusively, at least 50% or so, by those who consume, those who buy the journalistic content, and then in addition by advertising, lies in your hands as users, but very important as voters and deciders of the modernization of these laws. Thank you very much.
Questa è una richiesta. Se qualcuno, come dire, è d'accordo con l'affermazione di Florian Nehm può alzare la mano, e chi invece la pensa in maniera diversa o anche parzialmente diversa, poi dopo alza la mano. Qualcuno quanto siamo timidi. Ecco, una persona diciamo è d'accordo con l'affermazione come è stata.
Quale? For free or?
No. E il discorso lo facciamo dopo, no? Adesso è soltanto per alzare la mano. C'era, diciamo, d'accordo che, se ho capito bene, l'affermazione di base è che l'informazione giornalistica deve essere sostenuta dalle vendite e dal consumatore, oltre che dal supplemento pubblicitario. o viceversa che debba essere for free, cioè gratuita o prevalentemente gratuita, e quindi poi con altre forme di finanziamento.
Il proprietario del contenuto giornalistico ha la libertà di offerirla liberamente. L'importante è questa legge che protegge che nessun altro possa usare per fini commerciali il contenuto prodotto da un'altra ditta.
Alza la mano chi è d'accordo con quest'ultima cosa? Chi non è d'accordo? Chi è incerto in questa definizione? Vabbè, vediamo di capire. Please, go ahead.
I'd just like to add something, because I think often assumptions are made by people who perhaps don't know about the economics of publishing. At the moment, all of what you see online, virtually 100% of what you see online under the brands of newspapers, is subsidized by the print. It's subsidized by, in effect, financed by the business that publishes printed newspapers. And so often I hear discussions in Brussels with the politicians and the regulators, and they go, oh yeah, but we see everything online and it's all available and you're making it available for free. And we have to explain that if tomorrow we closed the newspapers and we no longer published print newspapers, there would be no journalists. And so what the Financial Times has done is very, very striking. Because the majority of newspapers and magazines are still completely and utterly dependent on the revenues of their printed businesses. The other thing, in many, many countries, not only do we have to compete with for free, which is basically a regurgitation of things that we have already published by other companies that subsequently then make money out of our content by selling advertising around it, we also have to compete with publicly funded broadcasters who are now becoming publicly funded news websites. And it's very advanced in some countries and it's less advanced in others. But in the United Kingdom, one of the reasons why many newspaper publishers have been reluctant to launch paid-for subscription models, not to put everything behind a paywall, but to have elements of paid for, is because the BBC website is so dominant. It is something like 3 times more viewed than the next most popular news brand, which is the Daily Mail. I mean, it's massive, absolutely massive. So, you know, that is another element that sometimes we forget in this whole debate about where do privately funded media companies go in the future. And this came out really strongly in the survey that we did of our own members, the absolutely enduring passion to continue independent news journalism without fear of favour or finance from government, consumer groups, political groups, whatever. As Florian described, it's absolutely essential for the future of democracy. And it sounds very grand and very kind of highfalutin, but it is really, really important, because otherwise you just get a regurgitation of rubbish.
Se posso inserirmi, in questo tavolo, come vedete, ci sono rappresentanti di grandi editori e di associazioni che riuniscono grandi editori, quindi forse la voce è leggermente univoca. Allora io faccio un pochino da controvoce, da controcanto a questa cosa. Allora mi sembra che ci sono 2, diciamo, grandi questioni che abbiamo affrontato e possiamo riaffrontarle un pochino più in dettaglio. Una è quella che ha sollevato Angela in questo momento e l'altra è sostanzialmente quella che ha sollevato Florian precedentemente. Cioè, una è quella del nostro come gruppi editoriali lavoro, quindi, l'altro è come questo nostro lavoro si confronta sul mercato con altri players. No? Allora, cominciamo dalla prima questione. Angela ha rilevato un fatto assolutamente reale, che in gran parte delle aziende editoriali ancora la parte stampata sostiene economicamente anche le parti digitali. Allora, la mia domanda è però rivoltata. Se questo è così, non è questo indice di un problema? Mi spiego. Se diciamo in un'azienda il 70%, come mi sembra accennava Florian prima, delle entrate viene dalla carta stampata e solo il 30% dal business digitale, e per di più in quel caso di commercio elettronico, sottolineava, non è che questo è destinato, proiettato nel futuro, indica un problema, perché in realtà noi sappiamo che per ragioni generazionali, per ragioni tecnologiche, in realtà noi speriamo più tardi possibile, ma quel canale specifico della carta è destinato a ridursi enormemente. Allora, se non ci prepariamo, se le aziende non si preparano a invertire questa proporzione, rischiano grosso. Cioè in realtà questo non è un vantaggio, questo è un problema che noi abbiamo di questa prevalenza della stampa. E quindi in questo senso forse gli editori o alcuni editori sono indietro da questo punto di vista? Non so se vuole Nikos, Florian e poi anche Angela.
Actually, it sounds, can you hear me? Yes. It sounds a very complicated statement, what just Mario did, but I think it has a very, very simple answer. Very simple answer. I will give you two figures, okay? I will speak on behalf, as a person from my company, okay? Lambrakis Press Media, the largest press group in Greece. 4 years ago, we had 1,200 people working in the group. A month ago, we counted 660. Half, 50%. Eh? By Christmas, it's going to be 500. Okay? And it goes down, goes down, goes down. That's one thing. Why is that? Okay? The first thing, as I said, don't forget, okay, that, as I said, the whole industry needs to be redefined. Okay? This is the humbled reason, let's say, okay? The business reason is that, of course, advertising declining, and advertising declining in the print as well, we all know that, okay? And much of our content, Angela was saying before, okay, is free around the world. Content that is extremely expensive, okay? And please keep that. The large publishers of each country, they pay much money for their content, okay? From a little research I did, there are several sites around Europe that they are doing work with 5 people, okay? And with these 5 people, they have, let's say, 1 million uniques per month. And you're asking them, how can you have 1 million traffic with 5 people? If you check their sites, you'll see that 99% of the content is ours. Not mine, but there is a guy who is very strong and very powerful, look, Carlo De Benedetti, who gives money for that. We don't realize that because we see all these guys, as Carlo, as very powerful and very strong, but you don't really see them as businessmen. And at the very end, they are businessmen. They are not charity people, okay? So they need, and they say, look, we need to pay for this content, okay? There is this research that's very, very known that our content is being watched, is being read 8 times more in third-party sites rather than our own site. Can you,
sometimes more.
Can you imagine what we're talking about here, okay? If, for example, I have in one article 1 million impressions, okay? I have another 8 million impressions from third-party sites. Fine. I am a charity organization, so I give content away and I create another 8 million impressions. That's not bad, okay, because the buzz I have, the power, okay, is larger. Instead of having only 1 million impressions in one article, I've got 9 million, 8 million impressions. Up to that point, I'm doing wonderful work. The problem is that these 7 million impressions, 7 million times that this article is being read, is being monetized by someone else. It's not like I give my content and another site takes the content and put it in the web and I have more people reading. That's fine. The thing is, they get the content and they put advertising under it. And they get money. And they get 8 times more money than we get, okay? So I think the answer is simple, okay, in quotes is simple, is what Florian said before as well, and asked to put your hands on, meaning that how can we afford to give the content for free, okay? Which is a very, very difficult question. And if I were you, as a simple customer, I would say, of course, with 2 hands, I don't want to pay. Let's be fair, okay? Everybody would say, because it's used to go to these other third-party sites and learn about news without having to pay nothing. So a simple user will say, of course, I don't want to pay, it's free, it's everything there. The problem is that we are going to be losing the quality of journalism that we used to have up to now. And if we go to this kind of models, okay, we're not going to be able to preserve. I'm daring to say the word democracy. Okay, it's very deep, very serious word. But we need to say, for the sake of the discussion, okay, we definitely need to preserve all these kind of values. Okay, it's not only business at the very end. Okay.
Yeah. That's why we spend so much time talking about regulation, and it's kind of counterintuitive for journalists and editors and business people to have to worry about regulation, but actually it's really important because the regulatory environment in Brussels is on things like copyright is highly contested. It's highly political, highly contested. And up until now, much of the debate has been dominated by those companies that Nikos has described as free riding on our investment and selling advertising on the back of our content. And there's a big case, a big competition case before the European Commission at the moment for Google to try and break some of their flagrant anti-competitive practices. And unless and until the redefinition of the market takes place to provide a level playing field between all those players who now take part in this ecosystem, it's not going to work. And the kind of legacy of this last 5 years of regulatory inaction will be dominance in Europe by 4, possibly 5 major American companies who don't care about the values that we have cared about. They only care about advertising revenues and they only care about money. And you can see that by the way that they behave in corporate taxation and various other things. Nikos quite rightly raised the thing about business ethics. And at the moment, there is not a level playing field on any of these topics.
Yeah, my question then to Nikos and see Isabella Splendore from the Italian Newspaper Publishers Association. What do you do about? Why do you tolerate that other players steal your content and build their business models on your content? They are behaving economically rational. What I do not understand is why publishers and publishers associations are not pushing national legislation, those people you vote for in this room, the members of parliament and executives, to modernize the laws, So, Nikos, why do Greek publishers tolerate
very
this
simple
and
answer.
not talk to parliament?
Very dead simple answer here, which you never really think about it, okay? The publishers themselves, here we have Claudio, we have Mario, who have lots of experience in the Italian market, okay? And tell me if I'm wrong, please, okay? The publishers themselves do not really understand the problem. Do not really understand the problem. Don't listen to me, okay? I'm head of strategy, blah, 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 and I go to my Carlo De Benedetti and I say, Psycharis is our, okay? And I'm trying to say all this and I'm trying to say, be careful and we need to do that and that and that and that. And our publishers need to go to the politicians and all that and to do exactly what Florian says. The publishers themselves still haven't realized where the real problem is. And this is why we're very anxious and very concerned, because we understand the problem, okay? We know what's coming. We don't know what really will happen, for example, in 6 months' time. Remember what I told about this poker game, okay? And we try to do our best to inform the politicians. Look what Angela does in EPC. Honestly, we're trying to do that with OPA, but with our mind in the EPC, because that's more of their job, okay? We are the digital minds, let's say, of the CEOs of the companies. So we're trying to do our best. The problem is, and we haven't admitted as yet, is that the publisher himself has to realize the problem, has to understand deeply the problem, and has to say, look, yes, I see what's happening, and I really want to push it forward, okay? And this is not only a Greek thing, believe me. It's not only a Greek thing, it's not only an Italian thing, because sometimes there is a difference between the southern countries and the northern countries because of the habits, okay? Because of the penetration of the internet, because of the time you spend the internet. You know, we have lots of sun in Greece. Until December, people are still in the sea, okay? They're not in front of the computer. In Norway, you know, in July probably it's snowing, so they have to do something. They have to play with these stupid things, okay? But still, even them, okay? Because they have this different society issue of the usability of this kind of devices and of this kind of thing, okay? They are in a better position. But to finish my answer to Florian, is that the publishers really need to understand the problem, and when they will understand the problem, is they need to take their print philosophy and their print, their seriousness, the seriousness they manage the print organizations of their groups. They need to do the same with their digital, let's say, future, which is yesterday. Okay, we're talking about the future that is yesterday, and this is that we actually, to be honest, this is our job. Okay, this is our job to persuade people like Carlo De Benedetti to say, look, I know you know that something's happening, but please take it seriously. That is not happening, has happened. Okay, do your best, because it's your money, it's not mine. Okay?
Visto che sono stato chiamato in causa anche da Nikos e altri, onestamente io non mi permetto di parlare per conto del Presidente che ha già parlato, quindi le mie sono, diciamo, osservazioni da moderatore, va bene? Chiamato qui a moderare questo dibattito. Direi che da questo punto di vista, e rivestendo il mio ruolo che dicevo prima, prima volevo fare un'osservazione. Il modello italiano di giornalismo online è molto diverso da tutti gli altri modelli europei e nordamericani, perché, per esempio, i contenuti del giornale stampato prevalentemente non si trovano gratuitamente sul sito web. Il sito web è ricchissimo di elementi di informazione naturalmente accessibili gratuitamente dal pubblico, prodotti in parte da redazioni dedicate, in parte invece dalle redazioni tradizionali, ma i due prodotti sono distinti. Uno è commercializzato, sia su carta sia sui supporti digitali, l'altro invece è sostenuto con un modello di business. Naturalmente gli editori italiani, anche il nostro editore lo ha detto pubblicamente, quindi non sto rivelando nulla di particolare, sta valutando e riflettendo su come poter implementare delle strategie commerciali anche per la parte web. Tornando, diciamo, con il mio cappello di moderatore per cercare di stimolare un po' il dibattito, io direi, poi vorrei entrare nella questione big players, Google, eccetera, ma adesso restiamo un po' sul discorso più generale che Florian, Nikos e Angela hanno suggerito, cioè il fatto che il contenuto prodotto in maniera molto onerosa dagli editori poi si ritrova utilizzato e commercializzato in qualche maniera da altri players. La domanda diciamo del dubbioso di fronte a questo problema è: ma forse in questo mondo, anzi certamente il nostro contenuto ha un valore molto alto perché ci investiamo molto, perché la qualità dei nostri giornalisti e così via, ma forse se lo, diciamo, chiudiamo o se ne limitiamo l'accesso con formule commerciali di diverso tipo, forse la gran parte del pubblico potrà accedere a contenuti non dello stesso livello, ma diciamo di livello sufficiente. E questo è uno dei paradossi del digitale. Come possiamo uscire da questo paradosso, no? La legge in inglese dicono del good enough, no? Nella musica i file MP3 sono musicalmente scarsi, tutti noi sentiamo musica in MP3, no? Allora, beh, qualcuno, certo, i file non compressi sono... Possiamo intervenire? Magari no, c'è il momento in cui intervenite. È un esempio, nel senso è evidente che i file non compressi musicali sono strepitosi. Il grosso della circolazione musicale è una circolazione in MP3 perché è good enough per quelle contesto. Allora è questo quello che volevo sostenere. Allora c'è forse un contenuto giornalistico che è just good enough, no? Appena sufficiente, per cui la gente si può accontentare. Quindi noi con il nostro contenuto prezioso a pagamento veniamo, per così dire, messi fuori mercato. Questo è il dubbio che pongo ai miei ospiti.
I wouldn't care. Market is market. And because this kind of water has no market anymore and people do not want to pay this price for it, because the other, fine. Possiamo piangere su questo, ma market is market, libertà è libertà. Ma stealing is stealing. That is the point. Stealing is stealing. Piracy is piracy. And this water might be given away for free because the owner wants to give it away for free, or ask €1 million and no one will buy it, or give it for €1 or whatever until the balance of the price is found. But this happens in the protection that this cannot be taken out of the water kiosk.
But
Mike.
All the actually professionally produced newspaper branded content is still more popular than the good enough. And the difference between your analogy is the MP3 file is compressed of the original. The rubbish out there, what people get fed up with is actually not being able to count on its authority. So they know that if if the news comes from a brand that they're familiar with, it's likely to have been fact-checked, it's likely to have been produced according to some ethical norms, and at the end of the day, you go on the record, and that the publisher will go to court to defend the journalist's story. If you're flitting around the internet, you get facts, fictions, misleading nonsense, and it's much more difficult. And the reason why newspapers and magazines are so popular is because they're very convenient. They bring everything together in one package. And I think that's what the newspaper publishers need to count on, that is still worth paying for. That convenience is still worth paying for. And they have to have the courage of their own convictions. All the answers we got back in our questionnaires were all about how to apply existing values to new ways of making the content available. But unless you actually put a price on that content, put a value on that content, you can't really go on arguing that people are stealing your content if it doesn't actually have a price. So I think, you know, it's a very kind of circular thing. You have to sell at least part of your content to establish the value. And I think that the business owners, the top business owners, when they are back in a frame of a more familiar business model of selling the content, they will then start worrying much more about the theft of that content.
Let me supplement on that. I think there is a very serious trap here.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I think is a very serious trap, okay? The trap is the distinction between good content and bad content from the same publisher, okay? What you're saying is, look, in Italy, the newspaper content, the content comes from the newspaper, is locked, is fully secured, okay? And the other content is open, and we'll see how we monetize that, okay? I think, because I've done this discussion so many times, Mario, I think this is something that doesn't allow publishers to go forward, meaning because the so-called not very good content, which is the free content, is made by the same people in our publishing houses, okay? But we have the deep, loyal content, which is, let's say, more expensive, and this has to be locked and has to be secured and has to be paid. And all the other content, to be honest with you, the same people write the other content as well, has to be free, and we have to find money for it. Listen to that, please. If you take the metrics, the traffic, the measures we're doing, okay, you know that in digital, we can even measure the breadth of what we're doing, okay? So I've got a team with metrics analysts who always take numbers and all that, okay? Listen to a metric, which is very important. I don't know what happened, for example, to La Repubblica, but I'll tell you what happened to many newspapers that have discussed that. You'll see that the users who use an iPad, read the newspaper site from the browser of the iPad, something like in a percentage of 2% of the entire traffic. This is a very bad figure. It's a dangerous figure, meaning that if we ask here how many iPads we have, probably we have more iPads than the people are in this room, okay? If you ask yourself, do you really read the Washington Post through the browser of the iPad? There will be many people, younger, will say, what is Washington Post? Okay? And this is something very serious that we need to take place, because the question so goes to how important good content is for the digital users. And then you try to do this balance, and you say, okay, I secure my good content, is very loyal, and I'll really make good light content for the people who read this kind of content, okay? And another thing which is very important here is that, as I said, see the devices. Okay, we don't take seriously this issue as well. Okay, up to now we had the desktops, we had the laptops, we had the TV. Okay, now we have these. We need to be able to use all this philosophy and know-how we have in the news to adapt to the needs of the users who use this kind of devices. And the people who are going to do that are the same people who are doing the newspapers. I remember, actually, you were in that meeting in Madrid, both of you, Claudia and Mario, the people from El País were telling us that the most successful Twitter account in El País was one of the most famous newspapers, an old person, the most famous newspaper in El País had the most successful Twitter account. So what that means is that good content is still there. Okay, means that people who create good content do have a target group still there. Okay, so this is, I think, is what we really need to take in mind, that there is not much different in our groups. Okay, between we shouldn't take it, we shouldn't distinct very much the what we call the newspaper content from the non-newspaper content, I think.
Infatti, se posso, andiamo ancora un ultimo minuto e poi dopo diamo la parola ai nostri amici nel pubblico. La questione dei big players. No? Abbiamo parlato di Google, abbiamo parlato della legge tedesca che protegge gli estratti sui motori di ricerca o in genere sugli aggregatori. Sappiamo che ci sono state delle intese in Francia, sappiamo di queste cose qui, ma forse Google poi non è l'unico grande player internazionale non editoriale che, diciamo, crea con le sue azioni problemi per le industrie editoriali in Europa. Allora, quando si invoca un campo di concorrenza paritario, un level field della concorrenza, cosa si intende? Che cos'è? Perché all'esterno sembra certe volte che gli editori richiedono delle protezioni, in un qualche senso, contro una concorrenza di aziende più giovani, tecnologicamente più avanzate, finanziariamente più robuste, che in realtà stanno mangiando nel nostro terreno e noi chiediamo alle politiche nazionali o alla politica europea in qualche maniera di essere protetti. Perché? Perché siamo bravi, perché facciamo dei bei contenuti, perché la democrazia senza di noi non può funzionare. È così? O cosa in gioco? Possiamo fare un giro e poi dopo...
Well, we're not asking for protection. We're asking for transparency and open competition. And at the moment, the market is dysfunctional. And I think, as Florian said earlier, publishers are very happy to compete with each other and with anybody else. And the better you are, the better you do. But at the moment, there are serious problems with the market that can only be fixed by regulatory intervention. And Google is the biggest problem for publishers, but not the only problem. And the sadness really is that these companies normally ought to be our natural business partners, our natural allies, serious technology companies. We should be working with them, and it shouldn't be such an unequal partnership. And that's what we're trying to do, is to redress the balance so that publishers have some bargaining power. But when you have hundreds and even thousands of small companies having to do deals with 5, perhaps, large companies, it's not an equal bargaining position at all. And competition policy, ironically, prevents all the German publishers sitting in one room and deciding how they're going to deal with Apple, how they're going to deal with Amazon, how they're going to deal with Facebook. And it's the same in all the other countries. And I think some of the things that might have been natural to do just haven't happened because it's been anti-competitive on the publisher side. which is a bit ironic when we end up in court for pricing problems with Apple or Amazon. But I have some confidence that the European Union will at least start to tackle these issues. But I think a lot of them have to be tackled at national level too. It has to be, the debate has to happen in national markets, in national parliaments, with national competition authorities. And so long as the consumer is happy, again, it's very difficult sometimes to reverse these things because the consumer thinks they're getting a good deal, and competition policy experts think, well, then the market's okay. So it is very complicated.
Of course, it's not only Google. Okay, it's not only Google. And to be honest with you, Google is more complicated to get. You get only a little percentage of the problem with Google, which I can explain in 1 minute. Okay, because people who are not in the media probably do not understand that. Okay, you are an advertiser, and you have 500 euros to advertise yourself. Okay, you come to my group. We have 7 large sites. Okay, and I give you the opportunity to show your advertising in your advertisement in 4.5 million people. Okay, this is what we do. You take the same 500 euros, and there is Google, and they tell you, you are in Greece. Are you a small hotel in Mykonos? Okay, come on, don't go to Lambrakis Press. They have 4.5 million people watching them. No. They said, you go to Google. Yes, but Google is not a media. It's not a media group. No. Google has a network of 35,000 sites. So you take your 500 euros and you put in this 35,000 sites network that is allowed to have adverts from Google. Okay, so the ROI you're going to get back, then it's a very serious story, and how you trying to compete. Okay, the numbers are huge in Google, and this is a very, very serious problem of how we handle that. But this is only the one thing. The other thing is what I said before, is the telecommunication companies. I remember when we were discussing about Google or MSN, they will say that we are frenemies. Friend and enemy, frenemies. We are frenemies, and we love this word because we saw people, we saw publishers in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, in France, in England, in the US that really get money from Google. So you cannot say that, look, we are enemies. We get money out of Google. Okay, the same with MSN. Now, I think the newest problem in the game, okay, the new war that has started is the telecommunication companies. Because up to now, you will say, okay, I am La Repubblica, and I will have a very good cooperation with Vodafone, okay, for instance, and I will say, I'll give you the Repubblica PDF to Vodafone, and everything will be fine. And then I will have 15 million users who have a Vodafone device, and they will be accessing the PDF of Republica. Fantastic business, brilliant. Okay, that was up to last year, in my opinion. Okay, so we were very good friends with all these telecommunication companies. Now the telecommunication companies say, look, guys, we have 20 million people, and we communicate every day with them through this machine. Okay, look. Okay, thank you very much that you give me your PDF, but I'll go to Corriere della Sera, I'll go to the other one, I'll go to the other one, I'll go to the other one, and instead of giving just the Repubblica, I will give 10 newspapers there. Okay, so then you're losing your competitive case you have there. Meaning that then the telecommunication company comes to you and said, look, for God's sake, I've got the people, you just won, so I need to have the others as well. So I put you there, and I am a telecommunication company, my user is going to be having the full of the service that I can give. Okay? So there I go again. A new story starting now. And you say, look, shall I give that to AT&T? Shall we give that to Vodafone? Shall I give that? If I don't give it, okay, I've got a problem because there are, again, there is direct communication with this machine. So I don't want to lose. They do pay. They do pay, but again, I am the third player in the game. I'm not the first. Okay, I'm the content. You want to read La Repubblica through this machine here, and you have Vodafone, for example, to get some money from it. You have iTunes, Apple, to get some money for it. You have millions, different parties that will get the money out of it, and you are going to be the very last player who pick up nothing at the very end. Okay, so this is very, very serious thing. So it's not only the big Google MSNs and all this, the telecommunications as well.
Florian, if you can just add something, and then we open the floor to the questions.
No comment on state help. No state help. Please, state, do not subsidize journalistic enterprises, but close the gaps. Films cannot be shown for commercial purposes without paying a fee or asking for permission. Music cannot. Journalistic content should have the same protection so that the producer has the exclusive right to decide whether to give it away for free or ask for some recompensation, etc. That is all we need.
Grazie. Allora, dovrebbe esserci un microfono. Se possiamo prendere qualche domanda, ne vedo 3 già, ce le appuntiamo e poi i nostri ospiti potranno rispondere brevemente alle domande. Vi prego di essere molto sintetici con una domanda precisa. Grazie.
Io, più che una domanda, vorrei proporvi un quadro diverso da quello che avete esposto un po' tutti, per il problema
rapidamente.
Sì, della comunicazione digitale, diciamo in questa maniera. Io sono uno studente di informatica e magari riesco a vedere da un aspetto diverso. Prima avete accennato al fatto che magari su Twitter uno dei maggiori account di tweet seguiti nella propria nazione è proprio il giornale di quella nazione, no? Per esempio la Repubblica è molto seguita in Italia. E al contrario, se non c'è gente che magari sullo smartphone o sul tablet va a cercare il browser, sul browser il sito del giornale stesso, no? Avete mai sentito parlare di Flipboard e cose simili? Cioè delle app dove praticamente ci sono varie notizie prese da giornali di qua e di là. Il punto, secondo me, vista anche da una generazione abbastanza nuova, è questo, che il browser è scocciante. Nel senso, se uno deve andare a cercare la pagina web di quel giornale, non lo fa, perché ci vuole tempo. Piuttosto sarebbe utile creare un'app di ogni giornale. L'app viene pagata, viene direttamente all'azienda e poi soprattutto si evita quel discorso che facevate prima su Google, perché il dispositivo ormai ce l'ho io, non è più la Nokia che mi ha dato questo telefono, il dispositivo è ovunque.
Chiarissimo, grazie. Passiamo a quello dietro.
Sì, volevo dire una cosa sull'ultimo discorso dei big players, come avete detto, di Google, ma quello che ha detto De Benedetti un'ora fa in apertura, se Google avesse pagato più tasse avremmo potuto salvare l'Italia, non è un goccino ipocrita dal vostro punto di vista, dato il fatto che l'industria italiana si aspetta sempre la manina dello Stato oppure diciamo, l'aiuto da parte di qualcun altro e non c'è un vero regime di business e di concorrenza come invece il suo collega tedesco ha detto prima dovrebbe esistere? Perché cioè, il fatto è che la situazione italiana credo sia un pochino diversa da quella straniera. Potrei essere d'accordo con i discorsi dei suoi colleghi stranieri, però guardando tutti i giorni la situazione dell'editoria italiana, che è evidente che non vuole muovere un passo verso l'innovazione o verso diversi modelli di business. No, niente, volevo soltanto puntualizzare questa cosa, che mi sto annodando.
Abbiamo capito.
Sì, no, avete capito comunque.
Passiamo all'altra persona e poi vediamo le risposte. Grazie.
Hi, thanks. I will make the question in English. I thank you really for your concerns about content providers. Being one, I mean, I'm an artist at least, and I think I've been trying to think about a constructive question to pose to this panel, because I think we have a stall. There is not diversity enough to actually represent various points of view. Now, I came to this question. Do you really have a conception of the digital space as a territory as it is? I can just put a footnote to that. I do think that digital space is a territory. We could argue about it philosophically. And as a territory has different laws, also physically it works different. It's a lie to say, or maybe ignorance, to say that stealing is stealing in a digital world, because you are not getting something out of someone. You can just copy it. You will not be privated to that. So it's not stealing. You can't use that really heavy word so lightheartedly. So the point I like to, the question that I pose to you editors from the analog world is, why do you want to go to the internet? Because the answer was already given by the moderator. Wisely enough, the editorial groups here in Italy, they don't put everything on the internet, and they don't need to weaponize their discussion by going to national states asking for changing regulations in changing how a new territory works. It's not your territory. You're obviously ignorant about how it works. You want to step in there and put laws, so I'm happy you don't come with weapons. We have, you know, like, come in peace, please. We have governance bodies, there is internet society, there is ICANN, there is like all kinds of corporate appealing bodies that can talk to you and can explain. So, you know, and the next time, please, more diversity. Thank you.
Ringrazio per gli interventi, abbiamo avuto la diversity che cercavamo. Per quanto una delle domande era rivolta a me, anche se sono moderatore. Se ci sarà tempo risponderò alla fine, o se no privatamente. Ma naturalmente lascio.
Very quickly, the first thing, why don't we have our own app? Actually, there were plans at some stage to do that, but we were stopped in the UK. The competition authorities actually stopped people getting in the room to design their own app. Their own kiosk, and you have to do it through a third party. I mean, that's just ridiculous, but I mean, that it probably would be solvable if you went to the competition authorities in the first place and said, this is what we want to do. And I think you will actually start to see more and more of these kind of aggregated apps. The thing, I think it was a bit of a kind of post-rationalization of what Carlo actually said, but I think paying taxes is your corporate duty. It's not state subsidizing something else. And that's a very, very complicated discussion to have, not least in this country. And what we were actually talking about is having a level playing field, not state intervention, not state subsidy, but actually having a level playing field. The final thing about the internet's not your territory, they have different laws, it's not stealing, is just absurd. And it's what we have to cope with all the time in Brussels. And I find, you find what we say absurd and insulting. I find that kind of thing.
I thank you for your concern.
Yeah, but the digital world, the internet, is not a parallel universe. Some people would like it to be. Some people would like it to be law-free, have different laws, but it's not. It's just part of our lives. It's just a different incarnation of what we do. And the same laws should apply online as apply offline. We're not actually asking for new laws. We're just asking for the same laws to apply and be enforced online as offline. And when you say it's not stealing, it is stealing. A digital image is still stealing. The fact that it still exists in its original doesn't mean that the copy is not theft. It is theft because it actually is commercially damaging to the person. If you just go around helping yourself the whole time to digital content and pretend that that's not stealing, it is stealing. It's actually creating commercial damage to the owners in the first place.
Okay, all three were very interesting points, but let me tell you something. First of all, to the friend there about the branch and the Twitter and all that, I didn't say that, okay? What I said is that in the Twitter, in Spain, the most interesting and the larger account is the account of a branded journalist, okay? And not for example, the account of the brand itself. Please make, it's very important what I'm saying, okay? I will take it in the Italian, let's say, environment, okay? The account, let's say, of a very famous journalist you have here is more successful than the account of Repubblica. Why? It's very simple. Because the users do not want to interact with brands. They want to interact with people. They want to interact with persons, with people they know who they are, okay? The important thing in Spain and in other countries now as well is that we used to feel that all these old guys who were doing journalism so many years, they wouldn't like to go to Twitter, they wouldn't like to go to Facebook and all that. But what really happens is that the world does want to hear them through the Twitter. And this is real. I'll tell you, I was begging to make the Twitter account of our own, of the editor of our largest Greek newspaper, to Vima. Okay, he's a friend of mine. I went to his office 200 times. I said, Adoni, you need to have a Twitter account. Oh, take that, what is that? His face was going like that. I don't want it. Okay, I persuaded him this summer. And actually, I was the one who made his, I went to his office. I said, get out of here, get out of your chair. I said, what are you doing? I said, just get out of your chair. And honestly, I threw him out of his chair, and I sat in his chair, and I made his Twitter account. He still didn't want to have the Twitter account. So I sat there. I said, what are you doing? I said, stay there, don't talk, I will make you a Twitter account. And I did it, okay? And now he's one of the most famous Twitter accounts because he's the editor of the largest Greek newspaper. So whatever he writes is important for the, let's say, for the people who want to read opinion and all that, okay? So that's one thing. Now, the browsers vs the app, I don't think it stands very well because we do apps, okay? But of course, we do our own apps. What you said is, I would love to have an app with all the news together. Fantastic. I would love to have an app with all news together as well, because I am a user as you are, okay? But we, as publishers, we do have our own apps, and we do have things that will help the user to read the news in a better way. I do admit that it's better to have a single app and have all the news and read it directly, and don't go to different apps or to browse and see these stupid big sites with boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes, okay? We all know now that the browser is not quick. We all know now that desktop is not quick. Even the apps are not quick now on, okay? So we need different applications, but this doesn't exist. We do have the apps. The other comment about Carlo, that was very interesting, because Carlo said, very simple, don't start to philosophize here, okay? I've heard this talk just today. I didn't have the opportunity to hear him saying that before. What he said is, look, guys, if Google paid a tax from the amount that we would get as a country from the tax that Google would pay, we would save Alitalia, okay? This is not a joke. This is very, very serious issue. It's not that the serious issue is not that they will save Alitalia, no. The serious issue is that the tax that Google was supposed to pay is a huge amount of money. It's not. It's a huge amount of money. So what he said, look, if I pay tax because I'm Carlo De Benedetti and I am the publisher of the Google Espresso, blah, 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 all that, and I've got a major competitor who is called Google. I don't care who comes from the moon, okay? But he's here and does the same business that I do, or he wants to say that he does the same business that I do. I want him to pay the same tax that I pay, okay? And instead of saying, look, pay tax so that you are less competitive to me, he didn't say that. He said, pay tax, and the money will go to the government, and probably we will have saved Alitalia, okay? So I don't think there is any problem there. And the third point is about the stealing, not stealing, and territory and all that, okay. It's so simple. We don't feel that the users are stealing the content. Please, because we hear that all the time, and I don't want to be rude, but it's very boring to hear that all the time. We don't blame the users stealing the content. No way. I said about the example with 1 to 8 million impressions and all that. We love, do you want me to tell you something else? We love the users to steal the content because we make buzz. This is why publishers exist, don't you think? Huh? Publishers love to making buzz. The publishers love to know that themselves are the strongest and the more powerful and the most buzzy, and they are in every Italian house and all that. This is their life, okay? This is what they're doing. The problem about stealing, which Florian said stealing is about our competitors, meaning that they get our content and they put advertising on it, like it was their content. Come on, I mean, of course you should admit that the stealing is stealing, okay? That's very simple on that. And about this phrase that is not our territory, who said that it's our territory? To be honest with you, we don't care very much about the territory itself. Okay, of course it's not our territory. It's everybody's territory. It's everybody. Probably it's mine as a user and not mine as a strategy director or PA president or this bull. I mean, that's stupid, okay? It's my territory. It's not Lambrakis or De Benedetti's territory. Of course it's mine. I'm a user, it's my territory, okay? But now I'm saying the hat and I'm saying I'm a strategy director and I say we need to be in that territory and we need to play our game in that territory. We make fair business as much we can play fair business in there, and we need to preserve our business position in that territory.
Not weaponizing your discussion by calling it fair business.
Okay, but fair business, stealing from the competitor, not stealing from the user. Okay, we'd love, please come and steal our content.
Right. Yeah, the topic raised here is the topic I would like to invite the audience to take home and reflect about that, and I'm thankful to this counter position. The law in Germany says who uses journalistic content for commercial purposes needs the permission of the producer, as it is already the case for a long time, and I believe in Italy as well, for film, video, and music. There is a gap for journalistic content, and yes, once there is this closing of the gap, the full ownership, and maybe you have own experiences with full ownership, that is not protected. This is what we are asking for in other countries as well, the protection of this ownership. And if this right is then installed, the gap is closed, then of course it becomes stealing and piracy. And for stealing and piracy, there are laws that need to be implemented. That is our position. The consequences of not closing this gap was discussed and explained here. And you as voters are invited to make your own decision and act accordingly. Thank you very much.
Eccomi. Ringraziando ovviamente tutti i convenuti e i nostri panelist, sarò disponibile per la persona che mi ha chiamato in causa per parlare personalmente. Una cosa sola devo dire pubblicamente che mi sembra francamente storicamente non esatta, e cioè che gli editori italiani, in particolare siccome si stava parlando dell'editore per il quale lavoro, non abbiano investito in innovazione. Questo si può dire che non è sufficiente, si può dire che forse, ne discutiamo, hanno investito in maniera non errata. Onestamente sull'innovazione digitale il gruppo per cui lavoro ha investito molti quattrini, dopodiché voi come utenti, io stesso, prima come giornalista, adesso come persona che cerca di pensare queste cose all'interno dell'azienda, possiamo non essere soddisfatti del punto a cui siamo arrivati. Di quante cose ancora ci stanno da fare, e io ne sono totalmente convinto, ma onestamente non è vero che non ci si sia mossi. E con questo vi ringrazio moltissimo e speriamo che tutti quanti possiamo goderci questo festival in questa meravigliosa città con questo meraviglioso tempo. Grazie.